Okay.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Number one, thank you for joining us. Hopefully, you've all dug out of the snow. That's what we were just talking about before everybody jumped on. But I'm Michelle Schuler. I'm the co-chair of IFMA Boston's Think Tank Committee. Thank you for joining us today as we learn about disaster level emergency preparedness. The mission of IFMA Boston is to provide a full range of programming throughout the year, including publications, training opportunities, webinars, networking, special events for facilities managers, and those who support the built environment in the Boston area. We appreciate you choosing to spend the time with us today. Now I'd like to introduce today's speaker. Ray Perry is the Emergency Management Director for the town of Portsmouth, Rhode Island, and worked for 13 years at Massachusetts Maritime Academy in the Master's in Science degree programs, where he taught classes in emergency management operations and emergency preparedness for facilities managers. He's an active member of the Rhode Island Association of Emergency Managers and is a certified emergency manager with the International Association of Emergency Managers. That's a tongue twister
That's
there.
a lot.
He has 34 years of military service and 41 years of emergency, disaster, and catastrophe planning, policymaking, and response experience. He is a graduate of the California Police Academy, Modesto, California, holds degrees in fisheries and marine technology, geograph, geography and marine affairs, and a Master of Science degree in emergency management. Some of the projects that Ray was involved in includes the Exxon Valdez oil spill, the Deepwater Horizon oil spill, and post 9/11, he served as the chair of Preparedness Committee of the National Response Team, where he led representatives from 16 federal agencies in an analysis of our national response system. Whew, good Lord, Ray, you're busy. But now I would like to turn it over to Ray. Thank you for joining us, Ray. We really do appreciate it and excited to hear what you have to share today.
All right. I thank you and I thank everybody for being here after shoveling all the snow and stuff. Appreciate that. I was really looking forward to this. I've always loved the facility management instruct students at Mass Maritime. They were great to instruct. They just came from such a variety of different fields in that area. Yeah, I think as we get going here, boy, I started thinking about all the stuff I teach and stuff over, 15 weeks and stuff, and wanted to cover it all, but obviously I can't do that. But I think the big takeaway, if you guys could get from this, is just to kind of put you in the mindset of what it's like to be in a disaster and a catastrophe. Facility managers, they know how to respond. They're like 911 responders. You're always something big happening in the facility. You got to go 24/7 and fix it, right? But to kind of maybe help you if you start thinking about if we ever got into a disaster situation, what impacts that would be on your operation and kind of understanding what those impacts might be. A little emphasis on planning and also on record management, particularly your vital records. So those are the three things that I'd like you to kind of take away here. So here we go. Whoops. Okay, why isn't it advancing? There we go. So I'm going to talk a little bit about disasters and catastrophe level events, a little beyond the type of emergencies that you probably dealt with in the past. Um, What we do is in the emergency management area, we do planning for what we call protection, prevention, response, recovery, and mitigation. There's funding streams associated with these from the national level on down. I'm going to focus a little bit on mitigation, response, and recovery. And like I said, I'd like to talk a little bit about your vital records management in anticipation of a disaster situation. And then also validating capacity. I know you guys all have contractors and subcontractors in place and stuff. But you also kind of want to think about, boy, how does that change when I'm in a disaster situation? And those contractors are probably stretched thin, and there's more of a demand for their services, than usual, and they might be damaged also as a result of the event. Okay, so that's what we're going to go through. There we go. So we'll start out. I would kind of want to describe what are we talking about when I talk about, beyond the what I call the 911 response. And my public works, the facilities people, you guys do that sort of stuff. Your facility, something goes down and it needs to be fixed right away, and you got to go. That's what I call what a 911 emergency is. What you need to recognize, though, is that there is a hierarchy of crisis. And I, as a planner, I kind of look at that. I don't look at a hurricane in category 3 or 4 and say, okay, I'm going to plan for that or this type of of an earthquake or something like that. I break it down into these three things. Our normal emergencies that we traditionally do. Yeah, we need help coming in. You got your contractors coming in and stuff like that. But you're used to doing that. You know how to work with these people, and it might be kind of a big event for you. But you've got it under control. Okay. You can meet the performance standards that your boss, that your facility, your customers require. That's not compromised to any significant extent. There might be a slight disruption or something like that, but you're going to get it fixed and you're going to get us back up on and running again. Okay. But in a disaster, it's a little bigger than that. Okay. You cannot meet your performance expectations because your existing resources and staff are reduced or harmed by the event that's impacted. Okay, impacting you. And your traditional local support, even the contractors and suppliers, may also be harmed, and demand for their services are beyond their capacity because their local customers all need them, right? You've gotten into like a big storm or something like that, and they said, yes, I can provide this to you, and they normally can, but now they can't because there's a huge demand, and maybe some of their equipment and their staff has been damaged also. Okay. So expectations have been compromised. Okay, so that's what you kind of want to start thinking about and planning for. Okay? A catastrophe is like a disaster, but a disaster is usually kind of in a certain geographical area. Maybe it's just your facility, maybe it's just your town or your municipality. Um, but but this goes beyond that. Okay, so if you kind of think about it, you need to kind of get resources in. You need equipment replaced. You need extra workforce or something like that. A catastrophe is much larger than that. It's regional in nature, and it's going to be quite some time before those resources can come and assist you. Okay, so just to kind of give an example of this, okay. Um, if this would kind of be a catastrophe here, all right? This is kind of to scale. This is Hurricane Irma heading towards Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, about the same size as Massachusetts, right? But that size of a storm is regional in nature. That would be a catastrophe where, it's not just packing Rhode Island where I could get assistance from Massachusetts and Connecticut and stuff like that. It's going to impact the whole region, and all those supply chains are disrupted, and the stuff I need to get done is not available to me. So it's going to take a while to get that up and coming, and I might not even know where I'm going to be getting those resources. Okay. So when we're looking at these things, let's just start off just to describe some of the hazards that are out there. You're probably pretty familiar with it, but this is a nice little chart here. It talks about the naturally human caused and technologically caused type of emergencies and disasters. Not all of these things, you kind of look over in the right-hand column. Not all of these things would result in a disaster or catastrophe type of an event. Like a lightning strike might not, but it might do something that takes you out for, a week or something like that because it's hit or impacted some critical piece of equipment that there's no supply, line for it. It's got to be maybe custom made or something like that. That actually happened to me when I was up on the Great Lakes with one of the railroad bridges going across the Cuyahoga River, and it broke. The actual counterweight to the bridge broke down, and it disrupted all the steel mills and taconite and stuff up the river and stuff. So it was just one little thing, but it did kind of have kind of like a disaster effect on a facility from a supply perspective. So when you're going through this and when you're thinking about emergencies and you're looking at whatever type of facility you have, and I know all the different, whether you're on a campus or a congregate living facility or a hospital or something like that, it's all different. But you look at your circumstances, and I would look at all of these hazards and see, okay, what could happen to impact my facility at a disaster or a catastrophe level type of an event. Okay. Um, so we're going to talk about, mitigation, response, and recovery a little bit. This is kind of a FEMA thing. So if you guys are doing project management for an upgrade or something like that, you're modifying your facility, or you just need to do some projects to harden it up and make it more resilient to, say, flooding or something. This is just kind of shows that, they kind of say just in general, for every dollar you put into mitigation, hardening that facility, making it resistant against what any of those different hazards that we talked about. You probably have about a $6 savings in general on the recovery side if that's damaged and stuff. So that's important. That's just the cost of replacement. This does not consider, inflation, right? It's going to cost more maybe later on. It does not also consider if your facility, your equipment, some piece of machinery, that equipment is insured, and sometimes you can get insurance breaks because you've done some mitigation action and it reduces your risk, and then the insurance company. So there are some other savings there as well. Okay. So this is just another one. This is just talking about wind specific damage. Okay. And is a 1 to 5, just in real general. Okay. Um, when we talk about emergency management, we're talking about, again, mitigation, protection, prevention type things. There's a plethora of things that are out there that are beyond code, but make that building safer for the building itself and also its occupancy. So I could do a whole session on all these different things, but this is one just kind of associated with alerting systems. So you've got a big facility, multiple buildings or something like that, that always getting the word out, getting the emergency alert out. How is that done at your facility? And there are systems out there where you get smart uh, smart systems that you can actually include in your building. Just another example here. This is hurricane-proof glass. It was installed. It actually prevented bullets going in during the Parkland shooting, and was credited with saving some lives. Okay. I don't know if you guys recall the Navy Yard shooting in Washington, D.C. There are a lot of kind of facility considerated structural things about this. They did quite a bit of an analysis on this because that response went on for quite a long time. It was a bit confusing because of how the building was designed and the modifications made to it and stuff like that. So here's the question: can design help reduce confusion during emergency? And it certainly can, and can help in protecting the occupants and the critical infrastructure and systems in the building as well. So again, just kind of thinking about that above and beyond what the codes might have. The Navy Yard in Washington, D.C., this was a big facility. It was more of a factory type of a thing. You kind of see the picture up in the right. They modified it. The shipyard became more of an office type of a thing. They made it an office space. Um, but it had problems. They had a shooter come in there, and I actually talked to a girl that she was in there, and she had the guy actually fought. She hid behind one of the pillars in the room in the hallway because she was trying to get away. She really didn't have much of an escape route. The shooter walked up to her, fired once, the gun didn't go off, fired twice, the gun didn't go off, and she survived. Amazing lady. She briefed us on what she did and what they did in recovery and the crisis intervention stuff afterwards, and helping everybody recover that went through this traumatic situation. But um, it was very noisy in there, right? When they rebuilt it and they stuff like that, they didn't have much soundproofing. They're calming. It was a big building, had a big open space. They were always hearing stuff drop, falling, banging on the floor and stuff like that. when the guy was shooting, they thought that was a normal noise of stuff being moved in the big center area of the building and stuff. They heard these loud noises all the time. Flyer alarms went on for hours. I talked about the pillars in the hallway. They were hiding areas, but with no escape. And base access, the whole flow through the place was pretty restricted. The victims and stuff had to stay there for over 4 hours just to be processed, and it was just again because of kind of like the design and the layout of this scenario. Now I'm only talking about one hazard here, active shooting. I can go into other ones, but I just want to give you some examples of it. This is good stuff to think about if you got a project you got to manage along these lines. Okay. Um, Other thing to keep in mind, your facility goes down, business is stopped, you can't provide the services to your customers. This is where that, particularly from a facility management perspective, looking at getting into that disaster and catastrophe type thing, doing that planning and not just, what we call plan centric, where you're just doing the planning, but get your stakeholders involved, your finance department and all that sort of stuff. And your emergency manager should do that, but you should be involved with them because you're a huge stakeholder in this. But if you talk about continuity of operation, business continuity plans, and you don't have that recovery type stuff put together, um, this is what studies have shown. You got a fully tested plan. You usually don't lose much of a profit. You got a short little dip when the event happens, but you usually recover your customers and stuff like that. The other scenario is, hey, you just kind of got lucky. They saw some things that, okay, you were able to recover, but you still lost more. You lost more of your customers and your output than the guy who had a fully effective plan. And then the people that don't have one and haven't done this level of planning, they a lot of times they hit a critical recovery point. They might recover for a little bit, but then they can't sustain it. Once you lose a customer, a lot of time it might go back. If you're a facility manager for a school and something happens, you look at what happened at Brown University, you lose a customer or something like that, they tend to not come back. So I don't know what your facility does, but just kind of keep that in general thought. Okay. So response planning. Okay. And I like to focus on your staff, uh, existing structures, and new projects from a facility management perspective. Okay. Again, consider not just your day-to-day type business operations, but disaster level events when your facility, your office, and its contents are destroyed. And this can happen, okay? And your staff is not fully available. This is the definition of what we call a disaster, right? If we can handle it, it's an emergency. But there are these events, hierarchy events, where it's going to go beyond your capacity and your capability, and you're not going to be able to deliver what you did before. Because you have been harmed. All right. So now you got to plan to surge in that other capability. Also, if you want to plan, and it's always good to plan for, probable maximum most worst case, uh, assume that the internet is not available. Okay. You cannot access the cloud. So you're a facility manager, all these things, you got to get these systems up and stuff. I'm thinking about, okay, I'm going to have that little go kit with me. I'm going to have a binder with me, and I'm going to have some of that critical stuff, not in my office because my office might not be accessible, but I'm still going to be in demand. I'm going to be critical to this facility's recovery, the response to it, and plan that way. Think that about it with that mindset. Okay. We'll talk a little bit about vital records management a little later on. That's going to be critical to your recovery. Okay. But access to response resources and job aids. I have my students, they build a little personal operations binder. Both the emergency managers do and the facility managers do it, and in the graduate program. And it's because there are scenarios, we can't always rely on the cloud. So if you can't get there, you still need to do your job. Everybody's going to be relying on you. So go with a mindset. You can't get to your computer, or well, actually, maybe you've got a portable computer, you got stuff on, but put some of that stuff in a binder. Your computer might be out, you might not get to the cloud and stuff like that, and particularly if you got like an electrical storm event or something like that. Okay. So put that personal readiness binder together. It'll make a huge difference when you're in that really, really stressful situation where you've got to act and you don't have those vital tools. So you can only decide what are those vital tools that I need? What are those checklists that I have? Do I need certain operating guides that I'm going to have to reference? And again, if I can't get to my office, I can't get to the cloud, I can't get to my computer. Maybe I should have that little go kit with me in my truck or whatever, ready to go. Okay. Who are the contacts? Who are the people that you need to call to start supporting you and getting resources there? What are the resource lists? Or these are just some examples that you can have there that I have in my Go kits and stuff like that. Organizational procedures, any contracts that might be critical, insurance policies and stuff like that. Okay. Uh, I'm going to give you some references that give you some more guidance to this at the end. Okay, so you can look up this stuff yourself. Here's a key thing: prepare your staff and their families, and this is important for facility managers. Again, you guys are emergency responders, and it's key to the readiness. Okay, so remember, your staff may be harmed. That's the definition of a disaster. They might not be able to get to work. Okay. Um, their family might have to evacuate without them. Why? Because their job is you're going to require them to be at the facility. Okay. So provide readiness guidance to do them. Um, and plan for that. Okay. Uh, it has been proven that worker performance decreases if the family is not prepared. So if you can facilitate your staff, your workers to say, hey, your family needs to be ready because if they've got to evacuate, kind of think about, but we need you here, you've got to prepare them another level of readiness that they need to be at above and beyond the normal family because you're not going to be there with them. They might have to be separated. If you're worried about them, you're not going to be able to do what is already going to be a very, very stressful job. Okay. Um, be clear on performance expectations of your staff too. If they are, if this family come first or something like that, do you have a backup plan where you can surge in staff from outside of your normal organization because somebody maybe has tipped that point where something is so critical that they've got to take care of family first. Okay. So anticipate a reduction in workforce and plan for that. You must plan for surging in replacement capability. That we're not used to that. It's hard for a lot of my students and stuff. It's hard for them to move into that because some of these have many years of experience as a facility manager, and they've handled everything that's come up. New England, we have not had disaster or catastrophe level events up here at the level that most of the other part of the country has, believe it or not. And so a lot of times we don't plan unless we've experienced that type of event. But we are vulnerable up here, so you might want to look and see what they're doing, in some of those more vulnerable areas, like in the Gulf and Florida, and out west and stuff like that. So that workforce. I just wanted to give you some strategies on maybe how you might be able to increase that workforce. Obviously, there's strategies. We're going to talk a little bit about that on validating a contractor's capacity in a disaster because the local contractor, they might be harmed and they might not, they might have a lot of customers at that point. They said in a normal, blue sky day, they can provide you, within 24 hours, they'll be there. Well, in a disaster, probably not. In a catastrophe, yeah, most likely not either. And so you might want to look at contracting outside of your area, outside of the what might be your normal impact area for that. Okay. Also, think about retirees brought back in. Deepwater Horizon, I was the incident commander down there. Most of the BP people that I was working with after month one, okay, after 4 or 5 weeks in it, were actually retirees from BP that came back in. All right. And they were the facility people and all that sort of stuff. Why? Because they still had to keep BP going, but you can put that something in place. I tell my fire chiefs and police chiefs, hey, keep track of your retirees. Maybe they can help us do staging when we get to a big disaster and stuff. So work with your HR, look at that. Cooperative agreements. I'll help your facility if you help mine, type of a thing. You guys probably have some of that stuff, but also maybe kind of consider that again outside of your region. Do you know somebody who has a like facility, and maybe your facility is already nationally or regionally they've got different components of it around the country, but maybe you're looking at maybe somebody in Cleveland or something like that through IFMA or something that that'd be a wonderful thing. The associations can do that and say, okay, can I Cleveland like company, can you come in and surge and help me, and I'll come and surge in and help you, and we'll bring staff in those times that are really really bad. Okay. Um, Consider project designs with the following in mind, okay? Protection of people beyond the code, okay? One example I want to give to that is like we talk about concealment versus cover. I've seen a lot of case studies in airports and stuff like that. Um, if you had an active shooter situation, for instance, all right, concealment is hiding, cover is you're actually protected against the threat against you, the bullets or whatever, all right? So how are you designing your facility? If you look at like, airports, they're wide, wide open. There's no place to cover, a few places to hide and stuff. But, look at your office, look at your space. Can you actually have people go to some place that they can actually cover. We always have these reception areas in there, wide, wide open. So, anyways, look at that. Evacuation type things too. Okay, think of the special needs persons, directional floor tiles, so on and so forth. The list could go on and on. Again, I'll give you some references a little later on. One thing I would also say is keep a wish list, okay? Even from your office and whatever you have, a lot of times our budget isn't going to allow us to make changes right now because, well, for a multitude of reasons, you guys have worked with budgets before, but but if you want something that you can build back better, but this isn't going to get through the budget right now, but you really think it's going to improve, the safety and the resiliency of your thing, take a note of it, keep that stuff, and because after most mitigation actions, most improvements associated with emergency response to a facility, okay, are made after a disaster has happened, something bad has happened. And so if you're ready for that recovery piece of that, it's gonna go much better. You're probably going to get what you want, okay? And you're going to remind you over the years. So I would have it as a policy. Most money you've got senior officials are more interested in helping out at that point. The money will stop flowing towards those type of improvement type things after a disaster has happened. Why? Because it's fresh in everybody's mind. Think about the Navy Yard, and the changes that they probably made afterwards. But you can be thinking about some of those changes beforehand, document them, and then you're ready to put that list out there when the political interest and the funds are available, which happens mostly after the disaster. You get a little bit of it trickling in beforehand. Uh, anyways, um, okay, I'm not going to spend much time on this. This is just a quick checklist and resources. For familiarity checklist, some of the things that you could look at. I'll let you look at that at your own time. Pre-emergency planning preparedness. Okay. Real responsible though, there's some roles and responsibilities. I just want to emphasize this. Even our town and stuff like that. When you're doing planning for disaster and emergency management, it's it can't be done by one person. Your fire, your police, your public works, your facility managers, your emergency manager, your finance department, your HR, they all have to be involved with that. A lot of times we do plans so that we can get the grant or check something off or a requirement or meet OSHA requirements or something like that. But you really need to be able to execute that, and the best way to execute is each component of your organization understand what needs to be done. They understand how that impacts them. That can only be done what we call a holistic planning. Get them involved. You can have a primary planner that's doing most of the work, uh, but if you have an emergency manager and stuff like that, support them. Get your piece in there and make sure you're taken care of. Okay. I want to talk a little bit about evacuation planning. How are we doing time wise here? Okay. All right. Um, And this is particularly up important in New England. We don't do it at the level that they do, like down in the South and stuff like that in California. One of the big things is they tell their population where their safe place is, where to go to be safe during an evacuation. What happens is we as emergency managers, we use this tool. It's called HERVAC. We're watching the storm comes up. If we're going to call an evacuation, we have to have that evacuation done by the time tropical storm winds hit our area. That's not a big deal. It's 39 miles per hour, right? Most people thinking they're evacuating in the storm. That's not the case. So if you look at this picture over on the right here, the storm's going up on the track. That blue line there is where tropical storm winds, right? So I'm projecting ahead using this model when that's going to hit us. All right. My point I use is Brenton Point down in Newport, although up in Portsmouth it's just a good landmass. When that's there, that starts my clock. We have this formula we use, a model we use. Studies been done by the Army Corps of Engineers, stuff like that. So we kind of know what our clearance times. That's the time it's going to take for us to clear our area. Okay. So for me, it's like 18 hours. It could be upwards of 18 hours from the start of saying, okay, we're going to evacuate, get all the systems in place, the tow trucks, all that sort of stuff, the roads set up, and actually complete the evacuation. That's my clearance time. So I'm looking at the arrival time of the storm, right? That tropical storm wind's going to hit Brenton Point, Newport. My evacuation needs to be done by that time. I then add 18 hours, backtrack 18 hours to that. But I'm also looking at the size of the storm for hurricane purposes because different populations will have to evacuate depending on the size of the storm. So, more bigger the storm, the more flood inundation, the more neighborhoods need to be impacted, and so on and so forth. Okay, so that's just in all how we do that. And just to let you know, we already do that. Massachusetts does the exact same way. We're on the phone calls with the weather service, the state, EMA, FEMA, all the emergency managers and stuff like that. From high school, from even the university emergency managers and all that sort of stuff. And we're all on the phone. All of the Red Cross, a lot of stakeholders are on there, and we're doing this like starting 3 days in advance and stuff, and we're coordinating, collaborating that stuff because evacuation really needs to be collaborated between states, and it really isn't up here yet. So just kind of consider that if you're going to have to be evacuation. Now, why am I focused on evacuation for you guys? Okay. Um, we normally just in general we can't mandate an evacuation, all right, and I tell everybody, even residents, even the person in the specific house and the businesses, all right, the facilities, hey, you need to establish, we're going by a guide that we're doing, we're going to say we're going to evacuate at this time, but will you actually evacuate? And you need to establish your own guiding trigger points. Okay, what conditions will trigger a decision for your facility, okay, to evacuate? And obviously, you guys have a lot to consider. It's not just evacuating people, right? You might want to be moving some of your critical equipment and stuff, to get it up to a safer place. Okay. So include that in your doctrine and work that out between your departments. How much time do you actually need? I had to do when I first got down there before I became incident commander, I had to throw an evacuation plan together for Deepwater Horizon oil spill. And we were looking at all these trigger points and all these plans. A final trigger point was actually came when are we going to say go? Well, it actually came down to we needed ambulances on the beaches because of the heat index and all that sort of stuff. It was a safety issue. If we didn't have those ambulances, we could not continue operations. All right. And what happened was the state already had a plan and said, no, we need these many ambulances at this time to evacuate the hospitals. And that was well before the time that we needed. So that became our trigger point. Anyways, so it became pretty simple in the decision making. We actually activated that plan 3 times while I was down there. So, uh, okay, the evacuation he chose safely. Now, this is where it's going to impact you guys. Okay, I talk about we don't really tell our populations where to go, but you really kind of want to consider that as an individual for your family, but also for your staff and for your facilities because it's going to impact your facilities recovery and ability to establish continuity of operations. Okay, so you're going to get them to a safe place, right? But what's the next thing they need to do? You're going to want them, they're going to want to get back. You want them to get back. You want them to re-enter back in as soon as it's safe to do that so that you can recover your place. Well, choosing what that safe place is in your evacuation plan will have an impact on that, particularly in New England. Okay. It's also going to impact your staffing ability. If they've had to leave and now they got to come back and some of them can't get back, that's going to impact you. Okay. Same thing with your resources, whether they're contracted or they're your own trucks and vehicles and equipment and stuff like that. If you've moved them off site to save them and they got to come back, it's going to impact that. Okay. So you need to plan and have in place pre-event, okay, solid contracts to execute recovery operations post-event, taking into consideration capacity of resources to meet demands of its service area. Okay. All the other facilities also are going to be needing immediate help. So let me, that, hopefully that makes sense to you, okay? Deciding where you're going to put people is real important. When you look at at our area here, okay, where is our safe place? If I look for us having to do a huge evacuation between Boston, Plymouth, Cape Cod, in New Bedford, Fall River, and all through Providence, there's going to be a lot of particularly with the population stuff, that there's going to be a lot of congestion along the way. But if you also look at the map, there's a lot of rivers, a lot of lakes, a lot of water areas. Hurricane Sandy, we've normally, our mindset is normally that coastal impact, that coastal interflate. That's what's going to be really damaged and stuff like that. Hurricane Sandy's damage was mostly inland. So if you evacuated your equipment and your team to this side of the river or next to the river or near this big lake or something like that that then flooded, that's going to impact their ability to re-enter, and you actually might be sending them into harm's way. Sandy was one of the most expensive storms, not because of the coastal impact, but we never saw that level of inland flooding. And then just what was it, 2 years ago or stuff, down in the North Carolina, and the flooding that happened in there from the hurricane that came up the Gulf. So there's a lot. So we could actually be moving people from the inland in our equipment from the coastal area into even another hazardous area and stuff like that. So that needs to be considered. All right. And we don't have a collaborated evacuation type of system here too, where we're coordinating that between the states. If you remember Florida, they evacuated one time, and anyways, county didn't coordinate with the other counties, so everybody tended bunched up in one of the counties, and the hurricane went over them. Luckily, it downgraded quite a bit, and nobody was hurt, but everybody was sitting in their cars, and the hurricane went over them. Anyways, so that's just something to kind of think about. Wherever your facility is, and it's not just the inland area anymore. Okay. Again, that research back, are your roads vulnerable to be able to re-entry to get back in and stuff like that? Is that going to be a critical part of your facility and its recovery? Okay, and are there workarounds? Um, I mentioned about validating capacity, and we've seen this happen. This was a big thing up in Exxon Valdez, right? We had all these contractors required by law in place with all the oil companies and all that sort of stuff, but they didn't actually produce in the end. So if you're contracting with these guys and they're doing it, you actually might want to have a provision in there for like conditions and stuff like that. And do they actually have the capacity to do that? To do that. Like I said before, a lot of times what will happen is it's good if you have a contractor. There are contractors who just manage themselves, but there are other contractors out there that will not only manage themselves, but they have the capability to bring in subcontractors, right? They can expand regionally and nationally to bring in contractors to back them up and stuff. And they can manage those subcontractors. So you might want to look at that as what type of contract are you doing? Just a local guy, or do they have actually reach on a regional and national level? Okay. You might want to validate through drives, actually make contact with them, actually go look at their facility and see exactly what their capacity is. Volunteers are huge. You could have a program for that. Again, I talked about before, consider retirees and cooperation agreements with like facilities maybe outside the area. Okay. Um, Vital records. Okay. I'm not going to go through this. These are titled what we call vital records. And you can apply the same thought process to your home, your own family records, your medical records, and so on and so forth, but also to your facility records. What's vital in the recovery of your facility? What records will I need to have after my office is destroyed? If my office is destroyed, have I backed this stuff up? Okay, do I have the ability to get that? I could tell you stories about families, fishermen who've lost their lives, not in Bedford, and that's their business, the family business. The records are kept by the father, the one that was the fisherman that was lost, and the company goes under. Nobody knows who owns what and stuff like that. So understand those vital records and making sure there's a mechanism for somebody else to be able to access them, manage them, but also to keep them and retain them. And the basic concept is, you want to back stuff up, your big plans, your emergency plans, and all stuff. Assume your computer's down. I know we got everything up in the cloud, but that is not 100% reliable, particularly in a disaster situation. So, you know, the idea is to back it up, keep it. Also, back it up, even hard copies, or you can do electronic copies, like in a thumb drive or something like that. and get it outside of the area that's going to be impacted. Put it in Cleveland or something like that. If you're a family member, stick it outside there. So that's the concept behind it. When you really start thinking about this, and you kind of think about it from a perspective at the home side, your death. What's my will? What's my bank account? What are all my social media accounts? How do people get in it? Do I want that stuff being around afterwards? Um, uh, but also, what do I need to perform emergency stuff? Our insurance policy, our wills, and all that sort of stuff. Same thing on your facility side. Are your policies and stuff, and some of the key information that you need to keep things going. Are they there? And how you're backing them up. Um, Here's just some idea, some vital record tools out there. Um, Again, my family, I have a go kit. All right. It's got all my family, I have all passports, everything in there. It's at the door, but I've also got everything duplicated at my cousin's house who lives in Cleveland. And I know if something happened, I had a fire in my house and stuff like that. You've got that stuff and it's available and you're not going to lose it. I'm going to tell you, it's a nightmare when you lose this stuff. Another fisherman story. I had a cohogger in Narragansett Bay, right? He went overboard. Single guy. He was about 37 years old. He owned three triple-decker houses in Cranston and Warwick, right? When he went over and he got, nobody had any access to his records. What happened to that house and stuff like that? And all that stuff. And, we work with the family because we do an investigation for cause when I was in the Coast Guard. So I'm in touch with the family for about a year and a half. And his sister was so frustrated because they couldn't access his vital records. They didn't have authorization to get into those things. And so you want to think about that from your facility's perspective. I throw this up here on your family side. The number one thing people really regret losing, my sister actually happened. She lost all of her family photos and stuff. They're all gone. She didn't have any pictures of any of her kids and stuff when they were young. That's one of the things that people on a personal level, um, have the most value in. But like I said, you can back things up. If you put some vital stuff in safety deposit box, look at the laws associated within your community because there's things associated with accessing these. These are little cool devices down here in the right. Okay, it's basically a memory stick, right? But it's memory grade. It's real resistant and it's secure. It's got a code to it and stuff like that. So if you kind of be a little creative, you can actually have that. Give somebody access to it or something later on, and protect your stuff. But um, but the vital records really becomes critical, after place has been damaged, and if you got to prove that damage happened during this event, emergency, you're trying to get something from the Small Business Administration, recovery type of stuff. Having those records of the condition of things beforehand and afterwards, if your vital records are actually every modification you make to your facility and upgrade, and that's going to impact on your insurance and claiming that insurance and even in government assistance and so on and so forth. And the more you have that and it's backed up, the faster your recovery is going to be. Okay, almost done here. So here's some references for you. You guys can, yeah, I think they distribute the slides to you. These are some of the textbooks that I've used over the year. They're pretty good. A couple of authors I think are actually local here, but they're specifically they've got checklists in them and stuff like that. But emergency management facilities, they're all facility related. Okay, so you guys will have that. Um, Standards out there. So there's NFP standard for disaster emergency management, business continuity programs. Okay. And it lists the following types of plans: mitigation, recovery, continuity. Okay. FEMA has a lot of online. I know you guys got plenty of time to do all this stuff, right? But chip away at it, start it, prioritize. It's going to take years, actually to get up to, a good level of readiness. I mean, that's the reality that I've found out in government. We're all built for, efficiency, not resiliency. We only have so much time to do stuff, but you're going to be a lot more comfortable, a lot less stress if you start working down and building this, a little at a time. American Society of Civil Engineers, some documents that will help you along there. And that is it. So I've got some other slides here if you wanna, waves, wind type stuff. Uh, I wanted to get into damage assessment too, and how that works for you guys. I don't have time if anybody want to give me some colors about it, but that's something you really need to plan for as well, and that leaks into your vital records and all that sort of stuff. Oh, the marine transportation system. So if you ever have something at your facility, they've actually done a really good job in this. There's a planner up in Boston, and what they do is if they're looking at an area and they're saying, boy, if we have a catastrophe in this area, how can I still move product? And they've done this detailed plan on all the modes of transportation from marine, pipelines, rail, airways, over the road type of thing, and how they can switch cargoes from one system to another. So if your facility or something relies on a certain product, and they actually used Boston and Washington, D.C. as a case study site, and what would happen if Boston was really extremely damaged. How would they actually do this? And this marine transportation, it's marine transportation, but it covers all of it. This recovery unit was developed, and they've done a lot of comprehensive planning on that. Uh, a lot of things, particularly with flooding. Again, the first things that's going to go, it's our septic system. That's what's going to drive us out of our buildings and stuff, our sewage systems. Anyways, so those are there as well. Any questions, comments, insights?
Yeah, let's open it up. Anybody have questions?
I know there's a lot and fast.
Yeah, no, this is Andrew. First off, excellent job. Very engaging, lots of great examples. And it was one of the slides, I think, probably towards like the beginning to the middle, which made a good point on if staff are on site, it's emergency response. But if staff aren't available, it could be like almost catastrophic. And I just wanted to share, it was most recently it was this snowstorm that we had Sunday night into Monday. And you're 100% correct because we almost lived that and would have been catastrophic if we didn't have guys on site with a 6-inch line. The water bug went off, and we had people on site, so we were able to mitigate it relatively quickly. But if you play that example and there was no one on site, and then people are trying to dig out and get into work, it would have been a catastrophic flood of elevator pits and switch gear, and it just resonated. You're right. I guess that was more of an emergency response where if you don't have the necessary resources on site, it becomes much larger and much bigger. So it just resonated, and I just wanted to share. So thank you.
Here's a fun fact for you. So if we were to have a category 4 or 5 hurricane here, they predict over 90% of our trees will be fallen.
Hmm.
So you think about that from a debris removal from your roads and stuff and trying to move stuff. It's crazy, you know? So, anyways, just to scare you.
Yeah. Thanks.
Sorry for the phone thing.
Good stuff.
Just another comment too. I think, you know, I'm looking at this more from a facility standpoint. Having a disaster recovery company, and I'll plug Belfour because they're our vendor, is critical, and not just for a local office, but they have resources all across the country. And if you engage them sooner versus later in an incident, you talk about mitigation and damage recovery and all of that. If you can get them out there sooner versus later, get them on contract, get them, as part of your team, it's critical. If you don't have someone like that, now you're at more risk of trying to find resources that may be taken up by other companies that do have a relationship with those types of vendors. So we did that with Belfour a year or so ago, and prior to that, we really had nobody. We relied on cleaning vendors to do some small scale stuff, but we had a large scale. We had a water bubbler pipe break on the 6th floor in one of our towers, and it went all the way down 6 floors, entered into the electrical closets all the way down. So we basically had to shut down the entire tower, but having the relationship with them, they were able to get somebody here within 2 hours, started extracting water, drying measures, and we averted a really serious issue. So something to think about if you don't have one.
And a lot of those bigger like cleanup companies and emergency response, cleanup companies, they're already connected regionally and nationally. And part of their business model is, they help each other out. So if it happens in Cleveland, they're going to go and they know how to work together. It's pretty cool. You go to their conferences and stuff, and they're all really pretty well connected. but make sure you get that's the kind of contractor that you want. So they can expand. They have the capacity to pull in other companies to help them.
Do we have any other questions for Ray?
I had a question about the active shooter. Are there different, or are there documents out there that you can look at to see different types of level of preparedness? I'm just wondering what's out there, or would you have to reach out to a particular company to to hire them to bring them in to do an assessment or something?
So there are companies that do that now. You've seen they've sprung up in about the last 15 years that do a lot of that stuff. A good resource, really, FEMA does an incredible job. And a lot of the stuff is online.
Okay.
So if you go through their list of, you know, thousands of courses, I mean, literally thousands of courses, but you can get the type of, active shooter and they even have some stuff now on the design type things, of facilities and stuff like that. And and a lot of the stuff too, I've noticed, like when we talk about maybe making resiliency and stuff like that, like obviously, the bulletproof glass is going to cost a little bit of money. But other things wouldn't change the price of stuff. I mean, the way you position hallways and stuff like that. Tile on the flooring, for instance, is one thing they use where they've got colored tiling. So if people need to evacuate, you just tell them, a complex facility, follow the orange tile, and it's off to the side of the hallway and walk on the tile, and that also does is it keeps the people evacuating out of the center of the hallway because the responders are going to come down the center of the hallway, and it actually so that type of thing. So that wouldn't cost any more to a new project or stuff like that. So yeah, but yeah, there's a lot of a lot of a lot of resources out there, and I think FEMA is a good one, and then they'll link you to some other things. Um,
And Mike, I
so
want to say at one point that had actually been a topic that we had wondered about offering as a webinar or a course on active shooter. So it's also, I believe, IFMA International has some resources, and we can always put that in our parking lot as a topic again if people are interested.
Okay.
For sure. Yeah, Mike, we've done Alice training. So we bought like licenses through them. And there's also local companies that will come in and actually film the training in your location. So when people are watching it, it's kind of unsettling because like people are coming to your space. We had priced that out at one point and it was very costly, but it's also there too.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
and you're always looking out for your people too, and think about that crisis intervention stuff, the CISM stuff, the wellness dogs and stuff like that. There are people highly trained. You got up in Massachusetts, there's Hope Animal Rescue. There's different levels of training. So, like a mass casualty, like dog team, for instance, isn't the same training as an active shooter dog team CISM. There's some nuances there that they've really gotten specific that will actually help the people that have been impacted, whether they're the responders or a victim or a witness or whatever and stuff like that. And they've gotten really, really sophisticated. And you want to get them if you know who they are, get them in your plans and stuff. So, in fact, if you want, I could give you the ones who are and we at Brown University, they came through me because I worked a lot with them, but we have K9 First Rescue in Connecticut, and they've been to a lot of active shooter events, and then Hope has been to it too up in Central Mass, and they came through me and called them in, and we got them linked up into the Brown University team up there to provide crisis intervention. But that's that. If you're going to do active shooter, it's good to do the recovery piece of it too, I think. So, yeah.
All right. Anybody else before I hand it back to Michelle?
Actually, Gio, this is Ray.
Hey, Ray.
Hey, I actually wanted to sort of partially respond to Mike's question. I can't encourage you enough to reach out and coordinate with your local police chief.
Yeah.
He should be part of your active shooter response plans, and he may have some really good recommendations about resources to help you with planning in your own facilities. That makes sense?
Yes.
I also wanted to add that as tragic as an active shooter is, I worry more in terms of the facilities, in terms of the electrical grid. I find the electrical grid to be pretty fragile. And if
Yep.
the grid goes down, whether it's a natural catastrophe or whether it's a terrorism act or whether it's just overloading, it not only throws out your electrical, but it also throws out your access to the internet and it throws out your cellular communications. So an electrical grid outage really hits you in three ways. And that I would find brings you to your knees faster than anything. So be
And you
prepared
could
for that.
see it just from what was it, last week, 2 weeks ago, when they had that Verizon
Yeah.
outage? And just,
Correct.
just from a personal level, that was disconcerting. I can't even imagine on a business level if everything was down.
Right.
I use all available tools, all available electronic tools, but I have certain things I have a paper copy of, and I've got them duplicated in different places. So the other thing too is that my comms guys that raised my awareness of this is solar. It's just a solar event that would wipe out our power systems as well. So, and our communication systems is very, very present, I guess. So possible.
All right, Michelle, you want to take it away?
Sure.
You want me to
So
unplug?
Sure. You can stay on. You're welcome to stay on. You can just stop sharing if you want, and that'll bring us back to the gallery.
All right, I will do that then. And I gave you the present PowerPoint, so if you want to share with anybody, you're more than welcome to. Great. Thank you, everybody. Have a good, take care.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Nice work.
Thank you, Ray.
all right. So thank you, Ray. We really appreciate your time today. And thank you all for joining us today. If you're not a member of IFMA Boston, we hope that you found today's program valuable and that you'll consider joining our chapter. You can find information on our website, ifmaboston.org, or reach out to geo@ifmaboston.org. Also, I think Matt put this in the chat, but if you're a facilities manager and are interested in helping shape the content and programs that IFMA Boston offers, we are always looking for volunteers to join the think tank committee. Please reach out to Geo, myself, Rob, Matt, and we'll be happy to speak to you about what that looks like. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's program, and we'll see you in future programs. More content is coming out, and we're excited for the rest of this season.
Thank you all.
Thanks all. Phil,
Thanks,
great
Ray.
to see you. Take care, all.
Yeah.
Good to
See
see
you,
you,
Phil.
Phil.
Thanks, Ray.